Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with the happenings on the paper. Day two for protest today, where we're saying that yesterday there was a little progress as well as chaos in some parts of the country, talking about Kano, Brno, as well as Nasara, Abuja. Yesterday, the chaos really didn't turn out as it should be. So we just hope that today there will be more peace, and then we hope that protesters will coordinate themselves peacefully, even though we have to applaud the protesters of Plateau State for conducting themselves in a peaceful manner. We hope that this manner will continue throughout. I am Sada Elisha Dasham. Do remember you can drop your comment and your views on any of the story that is of interest to you. I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Tansi. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
How you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Great, thank you so much. All right, we should run through the papers and starting with the Blueprint newspaper.
The big story on Blueprint: IGP talks tough as protest claims 9 in Niger, FCT, Katsina, Jigawa, APC Secretariat waste. The writer says curfew imposed in Borno, Kano, Yobe, 11 arrested in Niger, calm in Lagos, Ekiti, Ondo, Benue, Ebonyi, Plateau, and others. Security agencies uncovered sponsor. This is a statement from Wike. You can start with the details on the front page. Why I killed kidnapped victim after 200,000 naira ransom. This is a confession from the suspect. Some Nigerian varsities dead exist only in name. This is a statement from JAMB registrar. African Development Bank approves $500 million loan to boost electricity access in Nigeria. On sports Olympics, the Tigers lose to France 54-75. You can find details on page 32. Reps move against frequent building collapse. Still on the paper, climate change, global financial system, top African central bank governors meeting. This is in Abuja. You can start with the details on the front page. Shell considers massive investment in LNG and gas. Nigerian students pass confidence vote on Dangote refinery. 19 killed, 24 injured in Borno bomb explosion. The last story on the paper: 30,000 mothers breastfed babies in Nigeria annually. This is a statement, rather a report from the UNICEF. We have a cross-section of pictures of how the protests looked like in Lagos, Kaduna, Kano, in Abakaliki, in Port Harcourt, Jos, and Abuja. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Friday Leadership newspaper. Niger community gets pipe water after 30 years. You can find that on page 7. Resume Kolmani oil exploration now. Bauchi protesters tell the federal government. And trending, we have financial institutions, orders closed from Thursday. MTN reports $519.1 billion lost after tax. Both more details can be found on page 2. 30 million lines not properly linked to NIN. You can find that as well still in the paper. And concerning hunger protests that turn violent in states, ground economic activities, highway blocked, protesters want fuel subsidy back. 10 killed in Borno, Kaduna, Kebbi, Niger, and Katsina. Curfew imposed on Kano, Yobe, Katsina, and others. And we can see a cross-section of the picture in Abuja where we're seeing that security operative had to even throw tear gas to actually make sure there was calm. And then we're looking at some burning in Kano State as well. We're looking at what's happening as well here in Kaduna. So you can do well to get the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On this day newspaper, the big story: protests turned violent as 16 die in Borno, 6 in Niger on one day. South largely peaceful. Tinubu meets Wike on FCT situation report. Looting dent exercise. Kano, Borno, Yobe declare curfew. Hassan will lose last-minute broadcast saved today in Lagos. NBA offers free legal support to protesters. IG tax officers on professionalism, threatens to deal with peddlers of fake news. Will remain on the street until federal government yields to our demands, protest organizers declare. CPPE calls for suspension of action. You can see details of the story on page 12, 27, and 28. Glencore's billionaire ex-oil head accused of bribing NNPC federal government officials charged with corruption in UK. House committee directs NNPC to halt crude for loan plan insists policy depleting revenue. Review your strangulating policies now, PDP advises federal government. Laments life in Nigeria unbearable, urges President Tinubu to address nation, announce major policy reviews. And then we have a picture story showing protesters in Lagos, where we can see on their placards hashtag end bad governance in Nigeria. Enough is enough to hunger and hardship. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, hashtag end bad governance, looting and violence, mere protest curfew imposed in 4 states. As well, we're seeing the big story still, hashtag end bad governance, organizers instigated mass uprising, looting, not protest, says IGP, place police officers on red alert, stop mobilizing you to disrupt rallies, Falana tells government officials. And I really think we should talk about this. We remember before the protests, we kept adding our voices to the fact that this is a peaceful protest and therefore nobody should do anything otherwise. Of course, as of the time we were doing dailies yesterday, it was just starting. So, of course, things were still trying to build up. Protesters were still trying to organize themselves. I mean, I was surprised in Kwara, Ilori, we had just 8 people coming out for the protest. And then I was like, just 8 people, is that the only people that really think there is a need for change in that state? But that is just by the way. I'm more concerned about people who decided to take advantage of this. We saw what happened in Kano State. We saw as well what happened in other places where we're seeing the number of people that had to die because of what is happening. And of course, here we're hearing Falana saying the fact that they should stop mobilizing you to disrupt. Of course, people's Falana is entitled to his opinion. He felt that this whole thing is being staged by the government to make it look like actually we told you that this thing wasn't going to be peaceful and then this is what is happening. But I believe for states that we saw that this whole protest was peaceful. So it has nothing to do whether the government spoke to them or not. Like we're seeing on the This Day newspaper saying that the last minute talk coming from Governor Sanwo-Olu made it peaceful. I don't believe it was because he spoke to them, but I believe that the people felt that it was important for them to conduct themselves, even though we can say that maybe he encouraged them the more again not to make it turn another way around. But I believe that we have to applaud those states that made sure that the protest was peaceful. I mean, I saw some pictures, especially from Plateau State, where we saw Christians guarding Muslims during prayers. And somebody jokingly said that the only thing that unites us in this country is hunger. When we're hungry, we unite to do things. But then, regardless of that, it's all about your heart, your mind, how you decide to, present yourself. And I'm really, really very sad for seeing those states that instead of conducting themselves in a peaceful way, took advantage of that, looting and breaking down people's property, government facilities and all of that. This is really not supposed to be. So we hope that the security agency were able to arrest the people who are behind that, because definitely, just like you said before the protest started, anybody that you see doing that is not a protester. It's a hoodlum, and the government know, or the security operative know how to actually deal with such people. But that should not make the government to feel that this protest does not have a reason. Protesters have a reason why they're there. And we hope we're seeing them saying that they will not stop protesting until the government listens to them. So we hope that the government will do something regarding that. So let us not just try to say that the entire protest was being marred by either violence or whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever happened. Just few states will not make the protest look bad whatsoever.
Stella, we've been talking about how even before the protest started, we kept on emphasizing on the fact that anybody that is not walking along others, carrying placards and making their voices heard are not protesters. Hoodlums are just thieves. Whoever is out there looting is just but a thief. An opportunist looking for the time to rob in broad daylight, as far as I'm concerned. whoever goes and is doing the opposite of what a protest is not a protester. That person is a criminal. And whatever security personnel decide to do with such people, if they are found, it's up to them. It is not them being violent or brutal to peaceful protesters. And the protest is on the street. It's not in somebody's shop that was locked up and you went to open it. You're nothing but a criminal. And this is where I would love to see our security personnel channeling their energy towards people who are taking advantage of the day and looting people's property and all of that. If we are out for hunger and hardship, why are you looting a television? It has nothing to do with what we are out there for. For example, you don't need it, except if you plan to go and sell it, which just makes you nothing more but a thief. We've had situations where people went and got palliative by force because the government were wasting time. It's no excuse for that, but we can say it's in line. But you are out of line. You're completely out of line. That is not what the agenda of the day. And then for that reason, you're nothing but a criminal. And whatever consequences that comes your way regarding how security personnel decide to deal with you, if you actually deserve it, you saw it coming your way, and then you still made the choice to be a criminal when others are shouting for a better system and all of that. And just as you said, Sele, just like we have flood prone areas, we do have violent and prone states in Nigeria, that regardless of anything, there's always been violence. Kano have been prone to violence before general election. After general election, we've been seeing different types of violence breaking out in a state like Kano, most especially during the election petitions and all of that, prior, during, after, and all of that. So it's not surprising that such state is just is at a peak of being triggered by anything, be it government policies, be it protest and all of that. We know what has been going on in Borno in the past, even the bombings before the protests ongoing and all of that. Niger too have had their fair share of, you know what, enough is enough. There are even states that you can even say they will be in a position to be more aggravated than other states, looking at what has been happening to them, and so far so good. Feels like no solution is coming their way. These are all the things, and I feel that if only the government of the day will sit down and do their homework, they will know where to channel their energy in terms of governing Nigeria and being able to stop certain things from happening. But no, we have a government that is not doing their assignment, that they're not paying attention, they're not listening. It's just what will be in the end of the day, and that is not how governance should work. We should be able to be deliberate about everything we do, most especially in regards to dealing with your citizens. So we'll just wait and see. It's great to see that it was peaceful on the plateau and many other states. It also shows the fact that yes, a protest can be peaceful, and anybody doing the opposite is a criminal and definitely not a protester.
True. So let's watch and see what day 2 of the protest will look like. Still on Daily Times newspaper, LPPC elevate 87 lawyers to senior advocate of Nigerian rank. FCCPC to sanction Coca-Cola, NBC for misleading consumers. FCCPC to sanction Coca-Cola, NBC for misleading consumers. You can read that on page 9. And talking about protest, genocidal threat against Igbo in Lagos, troubling against national unity coming from Atiku. You can find that on page 6. Still talking about the protest, reveal your strangulating policies now. PDP tell Tinubu-led APC government says life in Nigeria unbearable. As well, Wike declares government readiness to dialogue with protesters. You can find that on page 10. Here we have a picture showing despite the downpour, we're seeing youths in Port Harcourt marching to the government house in Port Harcourt over the hashtag #EndBadGovernance protest on Thursday. That was yesterday. We see that no matter what happened, these protesters are really bent on asking for a better Nigeria. You can do well to get the paper in more detail of story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, security agencies have identified senator as sponsor of protest. Wike alleges IGP places all command units on red alert to prevent further violent protests. The big story: chaos in Kano, Nasarawa, Kaduna, Yobe, Niger, and Abuja. Death recorded. Governors impose 24-hour curfew in Kano, Borno, and Yobe. Hoodlums burn APC secretariat in Jigawa. Protesters storm Buhari's house in Dora, suffer tear gas at Lekki. Peaceful protests in Oyo, Kebbi, Benue, Osun, and Plateau. Kogi, Kwara, Southeast calm. Pro-anti-Tinubu marches held in Adamawa. Protesters demand reduction in fuel price, electricity tariff, end to anti-people policies. Sultan sues for peace, cautions Nigerians. Still on the paper, Atiku condemns genocidal campaign for Igbos to leave Lagos Southwest. Police confirm 9 dead, 20 injured in Borno IED attack. 87 lawyers named senior advocates of Nigeria. PDP to Tinubu, review your strangulating policies now. And we have pictures, a scene of the hardship protest in Abuja yesterday, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Guardian newspaper, concern as protests turn violent in North, governors impose curfew. And in North, we have to be particular about the states, not all northern states. You can find detail of that on page 4 and 5. We're seeing the cross-section of some of the states that held the protests. Cost of healthy diet rise by 45% in 6 months. You can read that business story on page 18. Ondo Ekiti residential protest, low turnout in Ogun State. 8 die in Jigawa, Niger as protesters rise APC secretariat. That House of Reps salary cut amid public discontent. This is an editorial. That House of Reps salary cut amid public discontent. As well, review harsh economic policy, address Nigerians, PDP tell Tinubu. CPPE calls for suspension of protests as stock market shade 235 billion naira. You can find detail of that on page 3. Nigerians accuse NCC telcos of internet blockade. As we've seen that during the protests, the network seems to be extremely very poor. So you can do well to get the paper in more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On the Punch newspaper, we have Dangote refinery to go up 1.7 trillion naira crude monthly. A report, you can find details on page 21. African Development Bank okays $500 million fresh loan for Nigeria. Ribadu's men abduct Punch photographer, steal camera and belongings. Million GSM lines not properly linked to NIN. This is a report from telcos, and we hope to know what properly means and how to properly link your number or your line to your name. You can find details on page 20. The big story: hunger protest, 17 feared killed as firms, others count huge losses. 10 killed in Niger, Borno, 7 in Kano, others federal government complex looted. APC secretariat raised, OPS counts losses as banks, ports, offices shut. Federal government begs protesters, NBA offers free legal services. And in line with the big story, we have protesters in Lagos, where we can see a woman holding an empty pot symbolizing hunger, that of Abuja, and another one of Lagos. Still on the paper, FCE Governing Council removes provost, appoints replacement. House help admits killing Justice Ujumogobia's daughter. This is coming from a police source. Police arrest 6 exhumed body of Ekiti Varsity ex-DVC. Details can be found on page 4, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, African Development Bank approves $500 million loan for Nigerians' energy transition program. And on protest, commercial activities halted as pro Anti-government groups clash in Lagos State. NBA set up free legal help desks for protesters. LPPC elevate Ubani Nduak, Professor Oki, and 84 others to Senior Advocate of Nigerians rank. You can find that on page 4. Student protest, 14 killed as Yobe, Kano, Borno declare curfew. 6 protesters die in Suleja, Niger State. 4 killed at filling station in Meduguri. Protest turned violent in Kaduna. 3 killed and many injured. Police accuse Shiites of hijacking the protest. Businessman killed in Kebbi. Kano, Yobe declare curfew. Military takes over Abuja Kubwa Highway as protesters go violent, extort motorists and others. Protesters list 15-point demand to stop the agitation. We are ready for dialogue coming from the FCT Minister, Wike. Tinubu Wike meeting Aso Rock. You can find detail of that on page 5. We still have cross-section various requests coming. We're even seeing one of the looting here. We are seeing some people with a refrigerator on their head. So this is really a sad one. You can do well to read more detail of all of these in the paper. Security agency uncovers senator sponsoring Abuja protesters, and we hope that he or she will actually face the full wrath of the law. He should not or she should not be spared. As well, we are seeing even other stories on the front page of the paper, so you can do well to get the paper and read more detailed stories of interest there.
On the Nation newspaper, the big story, peaceful protest in Lagos, Rivers, Plateau, Oyo, and Osun. We have curfew in Kano, Borno, and Yobe, 11 killed in 4 states. No protest in Ekiti, Ebonyi, Abia, Anambra, Kwara, Kogi, Kebbi, Akwa Ibom, Benue, Ondo. Police dispense demonstrators in Abuja. Economy suffers multi-billion naira losses today of protest. African Central Bank chiefs in Abuja to chart way forward. Olujimi's son Ubani, 85 others become SANS. You can find details inside the paper. We have cholera vaccines to be delivered this month, says Health Minister. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Metrics newspaper, economic gains of selling crude oil to Dangote refinery in Naira. I think this is an editorial which you can read and continue reading on page 3. Still also on the Metrics, we have $220 million fine. Federal government fires back at Meta over WhatsApp exit threat. Says it's a move to influence public opinion, pressuring the FCCPC to reconsider its decision. So we are saying that there might be move to actually have WhatsApp exit in Nigeria. You can read detail of that on page 3. Calls for Igbo to leave Lagos Southwest deeply troubling, says Atiku. African Development Bank approves $500 million loan to boost electricity access in Nigeria. The big story, hashtag end bad governance. Security agency, protesters clash as protests turn bloody. At least 15 killed, several injured. Curfew declared in Kano, Borno, and other states. And as well, you provoke protesters. This is coming from Adeboruwa Flay Security Agency. How protesters murdered police officer and injured many, coming from the IGP. Tinubu's ministers deny asking MTN and Airtel to tamper with network. Hashtag Igbo must go. Lagos governor condemns divisive post, launches probe. Amid protests, Boala fires Tinubu's ministers, APC governors over silence. You can find that on page 8. Burna Boy reveals why he won't join the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, as it is surprising that a number of celebrities are not part of the protest this time around. You can do well to find detail of that in the paper. We have a picture story showing us a courtesy visit to the Lagos State Governor at the Lagos House Marine. You can do well to get the paper and what the courtesy visit is all about, and that's all the Metrics newspaper.
On First News newspaper, tragic turn in northern states as hardship protests sweep across Nigeria. Mass looting of public buildings in Kano, 7 buses burned in Yobe. Over 3 feared dead in Borno, 3 in Kaduna, 1 in Katsina. Curfew imposed in Nasarawa, Kano, and Yobe. Protesters, police clash in Abuja, tear gas, tension rises. Southeast states shun protests, Lagos, Ondo, Oyo, Rivers, others record peaceful protests. Senator exposed as hunger protest sponsor, claims Wike. Fire guards plank market shops in Lagos, properties worth millions destroyed. Adiboruwa slams security agents for provoking peaceful protesters. End bad governance protest halts business activities, deserts road nationwide. Sultan pleads for peace as hunger protests escalate. We have a picture story where we can see looters in action in Kano State, and that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Right, before we continue further with the paper review, we'd love to take a time out to let you go through the story. What do you feel the body language coming from our politicians and leaders, as well as what happened in some of the states where we had peaceful protests as others turned chaotic? So we would love to hear your own views about that when we come back from the break. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. You're still on to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, especially concerning the day one of the protest, how the protest turned out in various parts of the country, as well as we're seeing other stories that are quite of interest on the front page of the paper, where we're seeing that according to the FCT minister, a senator is part of the sponsor or the sponsor for the protest. So we would love to hear your own views about that story. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's continue the paper review looking at the Daily News Hub newspaper. Running Edo State beyond Okpebolo's capacity coming from a group. Day of rage, sorrow, tears, blood as Nigerians protest against hunger. Boko Haram infiltrated the protests in Borno, killed 4 and injured 34. 3 fear killed, many injured in Kaduna. Protesters burned the NSDC vehicle, vandalized property in Katsina. Protesters go wild as police fire tear gas, gunshots in Borno. Police fire tear gas at protesters in Abuja and injured many. Curfew imposed in Borno, Kano amid hunger protests. Hoodlums loot, vandalize NCC building in Kano State. Security operative battle hoodlums in Abuja. Mother with baby confront police after tear gas pepper spray used on protesters. Protester raise KASTLEA office, lose property in Kaduna. Protesters set bonfire in front of Kano government house. Police arrest journalists and protesters in Calabar. You can do also find detail of all this in the paper. Hashtag end bad governance in Nigeria. Protesters shut down minister at Eagle Square. You can find that in the paper. As well, we have economists as prestige names Tunji Ishola, Kayende, Babatunde, Adeyomo among Ogun 50 top role models. WhatsApp may exit Nigeria over 220 million US dollars fine. Ex-PDP chair Uche Secondos backs Dangote refinery, say we must continue to support local production. Over 50 reps back Kyari oppose Kodik's call for his sack, say NNPCL boss can't be removed while investigation is ongoing. Harris unchallenged as Democrats vote for White House nominee. You can find detail in the paper. Hunger protests will continue until Tinubu assent to our demands coming from protesters. Pro-Tinubu protesters storm Kanu Street. More detail found in the paper, and that's all on Daily News Hub newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, Nigeria orders squeezed by raising interest payments on debt is coming from the IMF. African Development Bank approves $500 million to boost electricity access in Nigeria. Calls for Igbos to vacate Lagos, Southwest states, troubling and divisive, a statement from Atiku. Millions of naira down the drain, Minister laments Kano NCC park looting. LPPC elevates Ubani Dauda, 85 others lawyers to sans rank. Police arraign 2 students for stealing 1.9 billion naira worth of airtime and data from MTN. The big story on the paper, 500 billion naira of Nigerians' GDP lost in single day as protesters defy government and march against hardship. This is a report coming from the OPS. You can find all the details on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 27, 28, and 29. Also, a cross-section of protesters across the country. Still on the paper, IGP to protesters, enough is enough, places police on red alert. 19 killed, several others injured in Borno bomb blast. We have a study, eating less processed red meat can lower dementia risks. Details can be found on page 27, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct newspaper, CBN delay in providing market guidance triggering Naira fall, coming from AfriVex report. You can find out on page 2. Igbo eviction threat. Atiku condemns hate speech, calls for prosecution of promoters of that speech. You can find out on page 2. Hashtag end bad governance protest rock Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, orders on day 1 of demonstration. As Wike says, security agency uncover senator sponsoring protests. Protesters burn police station along Abuja Kefi Road. Storm Buhari's resident Emir's palace in Daura. Detail found on page 2. And still on the protest, stock market record the highest daily loss just on day 1 of the protest. Electricity subsidy gobs 633 billion naira in the first quarter. And we have the picture story talking about the nationwide protest rally. Nigerians demand hashtag end hunger and poverty now. And then as well, we're seeing still another part coming from the Nigerian labor, where we're seeing still talking about ending of poverty and insecurity in the country. And that's all on Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On Daily Independent, 14 killed, several injured as arson looting trail day 1 of protest. Borno, Yobe, Kano governments imposed 24-hour curfew. Southeast states, Kogi, Benue shun demonstration. CSOs allege infiltration by pro-government protesters. Banks, schools, businesses close operations. Markets, shops open for business in Ondo. Police arrest many dispersed protesters in Abuja, Lekki, and others. Minister decries looting, burning of NCC Industrial Park. Equities market reacts to nationwide protests, down 0.42%. IGP puts police on red alert, says officers was killed. Details can be found on the front page. Nigeria breaks world record as 30,000 mothers breastfeed babies in one day. Call for Igbo to vacate Lagos endangers our peace and security. A statement from Atiku urges federal government to take action against those inciting hatred and division. Life will be better after this phase of hardship, Fubara assures. Nigerian student pass vote of confidence in Dangote refinery. LPPC elevate 87 lawyers to SAN status. Details can be found on page 6. Review your anti-people policies. PDP charges Tinubu, asks president to address Nigerians and announce policy reviews. Protesters trooped to Buhari's residence, Emir's Palace in Daura. Details can be found on page 6. And that's all the news on Daily Independent newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at Nature News newspaper, where we have carbon emission, 3 violent protests in Nigerian cities. And on World Ranger Day, federal government vows to eradicate wildlife trafficking. More detail found in the paper. Governor Sani unveils 10-year climate action policy for Kaduna State. Nigeria ready to lead Africa in plastic waste management, coming from Inka Lele. As well, NDDC embarks on clearing of creeks in Bayelsa and River State. Nigeria targets soil fertility to curb climate change impact, coming from Abdullahi. Bishop Kuka Sheikh Lemu El-Rufai addressed climate-induced conflict in Nigeria. CAMIC called global attention to dangers of ice melting in the North Pole. Nigeria caps off Olympic win over Australia. You can find that on page 20. And we have the picture story showing us this thick smoke being emitted into the atmosphere from buses set ablaze by violent protesters in Yobe State yesterday during the protests. And that's all on Nature News newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra Paris 2024, we have France beating Nigeria 75-54 in basketball. Kalu stars as the Tigers capitulate against the Blues in second basketball Group B game. And then the phrase there is tamed. And we can see that for the Paris 2024 Olympics, our hope is now on the tracks event. So Nigeria begin medal hunt in athletics, as we saw our poor performance in badminton. We also saw that of the Super Falcons not performing well. We saw that of our boxer not passing the doping test and then being asked to leave the camp of Nigeria and all of that. So we want to see if our athletes on the track events will give us some hope for medals. You can find details on page 2 and 7. Spurs battle Chelsea for Osimhen. You can find details on page 6. Fans back Iheanacho to shine in La Liga. Abdallah orders Justo for Pillars job. Waldrum hinges Falcons flop on poor preparation. United suffer Neves blow. Abraham on West Ham radar. Merino nearing Arsenal switch. Maresca hails in Cuckoo after first Chelsea win. Messi named in Copa America team. Details can be found on page 8. Usyk tips Joshua to beat the boys. Details can be found on page 8. And that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
Right, let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper, where we have basic students learning behind on 194,000 teacher shortage. Over 16 states having recruited teachers in 5 years, and it's very important that we have more hands because the number of students that we're not ready. By September, we'll be having for the new session for universities as well as a new term for secondary and primary schools. So we think it's important that the federal government look into having more teachers for the student. Nigeria gets African Development Bank $500 million to push power and clean energy sector. As well, we have youth protests force nationwide sit at home, 4 die in Kaduna, Niger shooting in Abuja, looting in Kano. Inflation weakens business activities first time in 8 months. You can find detail of that in the paper. And we have 2 picture story, one looting in Kano and the other where we can see the governor of Lagos State You can dribble together paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Voice of Liberty, WhatsApp may exit Nigeria amid regulators' demand. Day one protest, Governor Basani denies imposing curfew in Kaduna. Nationwide protest day one, Nigeria's economy loses over 500 billion naira in single day. The big story, hardship protest, Sultan appeals for calm, prayers more restraint, cautions Nigerians. The hashtag bad governance and bad governance protest snowballed into arson and crisis across the country yesterday. Sultan of Sokoto and President General Jamaatul Nasir Islam, His Eminence Mohammed Saad Abubakar, has appealed to the protest conveners, their covert and overt benefactors, as well as other critical stakeholders to shed their swords. Hunger protesters heckle minister at Eagle Square, Abuja. The one hardship protest, still 6 protesters shot dead, others injured in Niger. Civil disobedience, Rivers protesters reject Tinubu's new national anthem, Sing a Rise of Compatriots. Hashtag end bad governance, Christians guard Muslims during prayer amidst joint protest. And that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome, Sarah.
As well, thank you to our followers, our supporters, and every other person who made this program a success. And as you go out to protest against our protesters, do remember to be peaceful, law-abiding, and be safe. Have a peaceful and a wonderful weekend ahead.